that he was going to dance and in ecstasy, and he began dancing. And this young boy was peeking through the place where he was hidden, and he was watching, and he was thinking, oh. And then all of a sudden, in the middle of the kirtan, everything is raging, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, stop! I am not feeling the ecstasy that I usually feel in the kirtan. And he said, something is wrong. He said, is someone here who is not qualified to be here? Is someone hiding amongst us who shouldn't be here? And Srivas began to shake. And he said, my Lord, I assure you, there are no atheists or non-believers here. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, is there anyone here who should not be here? And he said, well, there is one brahmachari boy. He only drinks milk. He's such a simple boy, and he wanted to see, so he is here hiding. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, remove him immediately. Get him out. Does he think that simply by drinking some milk and performing austerities like this, that he's qualified to see this dancing, to be in this kirtan? He said, get him out immediately. And so they got the little boy, the brahmachari, and he was also quite frightened. But actually, when he came before Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his mood was one of gratitude. He said, thank you very much for correcting my inappropriate mentality. And I feel completely blessed that I was able to just for a second glimpse your dancing in ecstasy. But I'll leave. Thank you for correcting me. Thank you for this chastisement. And then he left. And as soon as he walked out, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, actually you can bring him back in. Because not by his austerity or by his knowledge of the scripture or his intelligence or some other gift is he qualified, but simply by his humility, by his grateful attitude, by his bhakti, that he's able to see me. So then he came back in. And in that pastime, actually, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was telling about other great souls like Gajendra, who was able to get the darshan of the Lord, again, by humility and by complete surrender, by bhakti, not by his knowledge or learning. But in a difficult situation, he wasn't struggling to figure it out for himself, kind of like Draupadi. When Draupadi was being disrobed, she was fighting so much to try to save herself. But as soon as she let go with both hands and just called out, oh, Govinda, then Krishna was able to get involved. The same with Gajendra, struggling and fighting for thousands of years with this crocodile and slowly losing more and more and more, year after year, becoming weaker and weaker and weaker. And it was only when he realized that I can't do this myself, that I'm not the person who's in control here, that he remembered his previous birth as King Indrajumna, and he began to recite some prayers that he had remembered or from his previous life. And when he recited these prayers from the scripture, here we have an example. He's not just remembering scripture with his intellect, but he's using the scripture in a moment of need to call out to Krishna. And because of that mood, then Krishna immediately appeared and saved him. So like that, these examples are there. Like Lord Brahma, he's here teaching us a very wonderful lesson. As you said so many times, Lord Brahma, he's actually the creator of the entire universe. We may think sometimes that the world revolves around us. Of course, Lord Brahma could easily think that, because to some extent it almost does. Because he's created everything. And he has 4 heads, and we only have 1. I don't know if that means he has 4 false egos also, but he has 4 heads. And have one and we become so bewildered. But here Lord Brahma, who has so much intelligence, so much knowledge, so much capacity, but he's being completely, in one sense you could say, humiliated, or has been shown up by Krishna, who's just this little boy. He's just a little cowherd boy. And Lord Brahma is this regal creator of the demigod, the real king of the demigods. He's the original person in the material world, and he's being completely humbled by this little cowherd boy. And then we'll see in later chapters, Lord Brahma winds up putting all four of his heads on the ground at Krishna's lotus feet and offering him obeisances and wonderful prayers in apology for his wrongful mentality. Anyway, like this, so many things, but we're out of time, which is probably good for me and all of you. Anyone has any comments, questions, corrections, additions, subtractions, criticizements?
It seems that it is almost impossible to overcome this pride, even if Lord Brahma could acknowledge. Why is that?
Why is that?
What's the question?
Yes, thank you. Dr. Carlos has said it seems that it's almost impossible to overcome this pride. If Lord Brahma was having difficulties, then what's the use for us? And then you said, why is that? So your question is, why is it so difficult to overcome pride? Well, pride is, just like we understand that we have an identity, an original identity, but then when we come into this material world, that identity becomes very blurred. And what happens is then we develop a false identity, what we call the false ego, which Srila Prabhupada explains that actually we do have a real ego also, which is that our eternal position is Krishnara, Jivara, Swarupoy, Krishnara, Nichidas, that we're the eternal servants of Krishna. But when we enter into the material atmosphere, we become covered over by the material energy and we develop this false identity of who we are. And part of that false identity is that we develop some sort of Ishvara Bhav, or we think that we are actually the controller because we're little sparks of Krishna. So we have the potency of Krishna. We actually have the potency to manipulate, to control, to exploit. Not sure what you were looking for. To control, to exploit, right? So we can do that. I can move this around, I can move this, I can make something that, I can create things. So we have that same potency as Krishna, but we don't have it in the same quantity. But because we have that same potency of Krishna, it becomes expressed through the false ego in a way that means that we can't control and manipulate, but because we have amnesia of who we really are, we're forgetting that that potency of Krishna should be used to serve Krishna, and we use that potency to try to serve ourselves, or try to serve those around us who can then serve us. As Prabhupada explained it as extended sense gratification. So this pride ultimately comes from, actually, in a sense, from the fact that we have the same potency as Krishna, that we're spiritual beings. But it's perverted in this material world, so we misuse it. Does that make sense? So why is it so difficult to overcome? Because it's an inherent part of who we are. But like lust is explained, Srila Prabhupada explains, I forget the verse, where we transform lust into love. In the same way, we have to turn this lust around and engage it in Krishna's service and purify it. So we have to purify our tendency to control, or the desire to overlord or whatever. Somehow we have to engage our propensities in Krishna's service, and then we become purified. When we understand that the origin of our pride, what we have to really be proud of, is that we're sparks of Krishna's splendor. You understand that that's actually who we are. That's why I should be proud. Or Prabhupada said, the only thing we should be proud of is that we're the disciple or servant of our spiritual master. But, so in that sense, that's what we have to be really proud of, that we're the servant of Krishna. That actually I'm a part of Krishna. But then that is understood in connection with Krishna. But the pride that we experience in this world is separated from Krishna, and we think that I'm great because I'm great, instead of understanding that I may have some capacity, but that's just because of Krishna. Another thing about this is that oftentimes, I was asked this recently when I was doing one program, and devotees said, they talk about humility, and they said, but how should I be humble, in the workplace, or should I use my talents, or should I just be humble and not do anything, like I have some skill or some ability, but should I be humble and just stay in the background? And, the answer to that is, no, that's not humility. Arjuna, Prabhupada explains, he was extremely humble by engaging all of his skill and power in the service of Krishna and annihilating, all of the Kuru dynasty and, and Kurukshetra. That was real humility, because he engaged his capacity in Krishna's service and followed Krishna's instruction. It wasn't that he should have denied his capacity or his capability and gone to the forest. So if we're proud of something, like sometimes we see famous people, they win a prize, like we were talking, we win an Oscar, oh, I'm so great, But if you actually are holding up that Oscar, and you're knowing that Krishna is the ability in man, and it's by Krishna's divine ability that I've been able to do anything. Like sometimes we see people say, the first person they thank is God. We've seen people like that, famously they say, really, I owe all this to God. And we might think, well, that's a little arrogant, maybe. But it's true. So in that capacity, we should see people becoming devotees, using their capacity, their skills, their abilities to the topmost, and then offering it to Krishna, knowing that he's the source of all this anyway. And then whatever we have to be proud of is automatically given to Krishna. So then we uproot this pride. We won't uproot pride by pretending we don't have it, by pretending we don't have any capacity. Because each and every one of us is a spark of Krishna's splendor. Each one of us has a unique, attribute of Krishna that's like an ember that's burning inside of us. And we have to use that. That's the perfection, that we engage whatever that is that Krishna has given us in his service. Then pride becomes uprooted.